Hello all, thanks for joining me. My name's Doug, and today I wanted to start with showing you one of my favorite flowers that I recently planted in the backyard about 2 years ago. It's called a blue hibiscus. It's actually not a hibiscus, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. I actually want to start in front of this flower because today we're going to talk about flowers. Last year, 2019, at the beginning of the year, we got a bunch of rain, and that rain did something that I haven't gotten to see in my entire life, an incredible wildflower show. So that's what we're going to go do today. We're going to go look at this incredible wildflower show. And we're not just going to go to one place. We're going to go to a bunch of places where the wildflowers are different. So let's go take a look at some wildflowers. Thanks for joining me. So I don't think you can do a show about our California wildflowers without starting with our state flower, our gorgeous California poppy. The question is, where am I taking this picture from that I'm getting these gorgeous California poppies? It's actually a little bit south of us, and it's at a place called Diamond Valley Lake, where we'll do our first little, get our legs loose a little bit and go see a few flowers. Where's Diamond Valley Lake? Before we go and see where it is, I wanted to show you this picture. It's kind of funny because on the day I went there was a big day for people going out and looking for flowers, and you say, well, no one was there. But the parking lot is actually just a bit more to the right, and it was chock full of cars. So where that red pin is, right down there in the lower right corner, that pin is covering up the city of Hemet, and we're at Diamond Valley Lake. You can see Pasadena way up on the left-hand corner. So we've had a pretty good drive to get down here. And start out, it's basically just a fire road where we're going to start a bunch of regulations and things. The one that I noticed right away was that no dogs permitted on the trail. So it's a good thing I didn't bring my dog down here. He would have been quite offended. But we might run into some other critters down here on a nice warm day down in southern part of California. And I'm guessing you can guess who they are. Our friend the rattlesnake. Now I always like to say that in general, and that's the big thing, in general, a rattlesnake is not something you really have to worry about. Like it says right there on the sign, stay on the trail. That's the best way of staying out of trouble with rattlesnakes, and watch where you're putting your feet. And you're going to not have trouble with most rattlesnakes. There's someone else that scares people, I think, even more than rattlesnakes. And that's our friend the mountain lion. Now, I got to tell you, in my entire life of hiking, and I've hiked a lot, I've never seen a mountain lion. Some people have been lucky enough to see one. I've always wanted to see one. Some people think I'm crazy for doing that, but wanting that. But I've always wanted to see a mountain lion. Now, mountain lions, we're really not going to see one. And there's a lot of reasons for it. Number one is mountain lions are not looking to go out and eat people, despite what the news says. They're out there. Their main game, their main source of food is deer, mule-tailed deer. That's what they like to go for. And when are they going to hunt them? They're not going to hunt them in the middle of the day when we're out here. We're out here in the middle of the day. They're not going to be out there when there's a ton of people around. They're out there stalking at night, in the early morning, very, very late afternoon, dusk, evening. That's when they're going to do their hunting. But like I always say, let's say you're out there with a friend and you have your day. There's a mountain lion staring at you from over in the distance. And I always remember the old rule. See that mountain lion is glaring at you? You don't have to be faster than the mountain lion. You just have to be faster than your friend. But that's an old joke I had to tell you. But the real thing is, if you were lucky enough to see a mountain lion's there staring at you, what is the one thing you want to do? The one thing you want to do is avoid that temptation to run. Because that's the first thing that's going to come into your head. You're going to think to run. You don't want to do that. You want to hold your ground. You want to look at him, not stare at him, but just look. You're going to hold your ground. You're going to back away very, very slowly. If you start to run, his predatory instincts are going to kick right in, and he's going to say, hey, that sure is a funny-looking deer, but he's running away like a deer would. I think I'll go and eat him. So you don't want to run away. If you have children near you, you pick up the children, you put them on your shoulders, and then instead of looking like a medium-sized target and a little target, all of a sudden you have a big target. Now let's go look at some flowers. Aren't they gorgeous? Well, there's our poppies right in in the foreground. And then the rest of those are called hillside daisies. And there's a ton of them. We're going to see a lot of them today. And in the middle is our friend the cholla, and we're going to see a little bit of more cholla as we go along today. Well, as you go around the bend, you see there is Diamond Valley Lake. And Diamond Valley Lake is actually not a lake. It's actually a big, giant monster reservoir. And it has these beautiful wildflowers that came out here in 2019. Our poppies right there, and the guy right in the beginning, right in the front, is our friend the lupin. Those other purple guys sticking up, those are called chia. And the white ones, I have no idea what they are. So I got most of them, but not all of them. And then we get a nice view. That gorgeous? So that's Diamond Valley Lake. I have no idea why somebody felt the obligation to go and build a jetty right there in the middle of the lake that kind of takes a little bit away from it. But they did, but the flowers, I think, are the thing we'll look at. So that was just a little thing to warm our legs up. And now we're going to head to a place I bet many of you have been to. Antelope Valley. And I'm sure you've heard of the great Antelope Valley poppy shows. They have the poppy preserve up there. And it's absolutely gorgeous. I wanted to show you. So take a look at this picture right here, because I'm going to show you another one. Almost the same angle. I didn't get quite the same angle, but something's different. And you guess it right away. Hey, there's some lady sitting in the flowers. And that's bad for a couple of reasons. It's bad for reason number one, she's squishing all the flowers, which is not a very cool thing to do. Reckon it for the future, people. But she's out there squishing the flowers. But there's another reason it's a bad thing to do. And that is because of this guy in the upper right. And these guys tend to hang around out there in the flowers, especially up in Antelope Valley. You can see him rattling his tail right there. You can maybe even see the tongue coming out of his mouth. He is not a happy snake. And who is this guy? Well, I like to show this picture and ask people, well, what color are you going to call him? And a lot of people go and they say he's gray. And I think that's a good guess. Now, then I go and say, well, if you were going to call and say what kind of tone does he have to him, pick something other, pick a color other than gray. And to me, he looks like he's got a subtle green into him, and that's how he gets his name. This is called a Mojave green rattlesnake. And the Mojave green rattlesnake hangs around. He likes it up in the Mojave. Sometimes, occasionally, they'll get all the way up to Death Valley, but they're mostly down here. And it's a good reason why you do not want to go off the trail here. And that is because, remember I said that in general rattlesnakes don't want trouble? Mojave Green's different. Mojave Green is one of those guys that says, all right, put up your dukes. He's more than willing to fight, and he's an especially dangerous snake. I came across this guy in a very unfortunate way. I was in the trail, walking on the trail like I was supposed to, and there was a big poppy overhanging into the trail, and he was on the other side where I couldn't see him, and I didn't see him till I almost stepped on him. I leaped, and guess what? You guys know what day that was. Believe it or not, you actually know what day it was. It was the day that you were eating breakfast, and you heard somebody scream all the way down here from up in Antelope Valley. That was me when I almost stepped on this guy. Because if you step on this guy, you get bitten by this guy, you're in big trouble. Most rattlesnakes, their venom is a hemotoxin. And the hemotoxin, hema, goes for your blood, poisons your blood. That is a bad thing to have happen to you. Cause a lot of damage, can kill some people in certain cases. But if you're lucky, most people come out of it. This guy has a hemotoxin and a neurotoxin. Neuro meaning nerve, so it goes for the brain too. And that's basically, in a short word, if you get bitten by this guy and there's not a doctor in a hospital right next to you, you're in big trouble. So when I almost stepped on him, that's when you heard me scream. I jumped over him. That's why the video was not really all that smooth, because I was still shaking after almost stepping on this guy. Well, let's look at somebody else who's not too crazy about the snake either. And that's this little lizard right here before we leave. This guy is kind of called a side-splotched lizard. And he's called side-splotched. I love his colors. That's why I wanted to show him to you. You got, I don't know, what are you going to call it on top? You're going to call it a turquoise on top, and on the side, I don't know what the color you want to call that. What it reminds me of is orange sherbet ice cream, but then again, I always want ice cream. All right, there's our little adventure up into Antelope Valley. Now we're going to move off to a place that I had never known about for a while, and that is called the Wind Wolves Preserve. So you say, where the heck is Wind Wolves Preserve, Doug? Well, got to go through the Tejon Pass. And you know, the Tejon Pass is when you start driving up the 5 and you end up in the valley where the 99 and the 5 split. The 99 goes up towards Bakersfield and the 5 goes up towards Sacramento and San Francisco. But right after you pass that cutoff where you're deciding whether to go on the 99 or the 5, you take a little road that heads due west out towards Maricopa. And when you're about halfway to Maricopa, you can see another big red dot. That's where we're going to pull off. We're actually going to be on the north side of the mountains we just went through. And when we go there, it's called the Wind Wolves Preserve. It was taken over in 1996. And the reason they call it Wind Wolves is not because there are any wolves there. There are no wolves there, but it's called Wind Wolves because of the undulating grasses that resemble running animals. So let's head to Wind Wolves. And with all the rain, you can see how green it is. Now, when we're going to go here, we're going to take that little trail. You can kind of see it zigging up from the lower left, kind of where that gorge is, and it's going to head up to the upper right. And when we get up there, we see just how green these hills are. Would you believe hills this green when you drop over the Tejon Pass? We're not used to that, are we? But there's the valley of Wind Wolves. And so now what we'll do is we will head to the south. We're going to be walking to the south. We certainly have a gorgeous day to do it on this little road. And my question for everybody is, why are we doing this? Is there even going to be any flowers in this area? I mean, it's all grasses. As a matter of fact, there were, you had to keep your eyes sharp, but there were gorgeous flowers all over. Here's a group right here. And we have those little itty bitty pink ones. Those are a type of geranium. We've got our California poppies. In the foreground, we have our lupin. And there's a dark burgundy one right in the center top. And guess what that is? I'm not going to tell you because I have a better picture a little bit later when I can talk to you about it. Look at the size of that lupin. Well, I thought lupins were supposed to go in those little short, little singular guys shooting up. And this one is a ton of them. That's because this is a bush lupin. When you look at a bush lupin, it's a big guy like that. Come down the hill, back down into the valley, and there's a reflection pond trail. You can kind of see it going from the top of the sign about where the R is, and it goes up the side of that ridge to where you can kind of see a yellow thing hops over there, and that's where Reflection Pond is. And I always like to ask the audiences when I'm live, do you want me to actually have to go all the way up that? And they always make me do it. So we'll head up that. There are our poppies right there. Isn't it wonderful how nature says, okay, you want to grow right there? You can grow right there. And there's the guy I wouldn't tell you the name of. This guy I thought was absolutely stunning. This flower is a little tiny guy, only about the size of the end of my thumb. And it's called a gem flower. Dark, dark, dark burgundy. In fact, it's really hard to take a picture of this guy so that it didn't look black. That's how dark a red, dark a burgundy it is. But we get to the top and find this nice sign. Reflection Pond, a seasonal pond. The adjacent Native American site and surrounding valley had been approved for a 500-acre toxic waste dump. But when the Wildlands Conservancy acquired this land in 1996, it means the dump will never be built. So I think it's kind of neat to have a nice, good story here with a happy end. So you want to go see the Wind Wolves right now? You want to go see the Reflection Pond? Where'd the pond go? That's actually it in front of the trees. It's dried up. Remember, it's seasonal. But we get to see the Wind Wolves. Isn't that magnificent how the grass is undulated like that? I have to tell you, as you probably noticed, I was really mad at the bug that hopped into my picture frame there while I was trying to do the wolves. But anyway, one last thing before we head down. Look at all those rocks. We've talked about that before, about the neat thing that you can do. And you go and you look at clouds or rocks or something and see images. And I wanted to see if you thought you saw any images right here. The one that is most obvious is kind of the skull-looking face right in the dead center with that black hole looking like one of the eyes. And then kind of in a little frown down there on the lower left. But it's interesting. People see, and that's why I think this is so much fun to do, people see another face in that. That hole, instead of being an eye, is the mouth of a face. And at 1 o'clock and 11 o'clock up, there's two dents in the rock, and people say those are the eyeballs. So you can see all kinds of different stuff in this if you look. A lot of people see the whale over there, far rock to the right of the group. They see a whale there. A lot of people on the big rock to the left, the one just to the left of the skull, a lot of people see an elephant there. And people see different angles of an elephant. So some people will say the elephant is pointing this way, and some people will say, no, the elephant's pointing that way. But my favorite answer, my favorite thing anybody ever saw, was a lady one time said, well, I see a profile of a face looking to the left. So eye way up at the top, a nose sticking out to the left. And I said, oh, yeah, I can kind of see it. And she said, it looks exactly like Richard Nixon. All right, one last look of this beautiful valley of Wind Wolves. A little bit of flowers there. We got to see a pretty decent amount of flowers while we were there. Look at that. That is one messy map, but I wanted to show it to you anyway. If you look at this map, way up in the upper left-hand corner, you can see a little red glob, a little pink glob, and then a big gray giant mass. Well, just to the right of the pink glob is Greater Los Angeles. And you go down that gray glob all the way to the bottom where the gray glob ends. That's Santa Ana. So you're looking at Orange County and LA pretty much in those globs, in that glob of gray. And then you go all the way down, almost all the way down to the lower right part of the map, and you see a monstrous pink glob with a white hole in the center, and that is Anza Borrego State Park, the second largest state park in the U.S. Right below it, you see kind of a white spot, where a white line there, a line with white below it, and that is Mexico. So it's all the way down right before the border. So we're going to head down there because the desert has some great wildflower shows. And if you're going to go look at a wildflower show, you've got to see some stuff at the desert. Isn't that amazing? It's a desert. You don't think anything can live there, and yet you've got all these flowers, and people jump up and they say, oh, look, it's the California poppy. And it's not. This is not a California poppy. This is a desert sunflower. And there were tons of them. And I was lucky enough that when I hit this spot, a volunteer desert naturalist happened by, and she was, answering questions for people. And I said, well, how long are these guys going to last? How long will they last out here? Well, obviously, depends on the weather. You get a real hot streak and they're all going to wilt. But I said, how long will they last? Because they look like they're starting to wilt a little bit already. And she said, the entire spot will be gone in 3 days. And I said, well, you mean the flowers will have completely wilted? She said, no. The flowers will be completely gone. Everything will be gone. And I said, why? And the answer was right at my feet. This guy. This caterpillar was a pretty big caterpillar. He was about as big as my middle finger. And this actually will eventually turn into a sphinx moth. But you can see he has already totaled that flower just above him. He's heading off to his next flower. I thought he was kind of a neat looking caterpillar. He's got those black racing stripes and the yellow dots on the side. But a lot of people go and say, well, before I even say that, I want you to know there were thousands of these guys all over. They were everywhere. It was hard not to step on them. I didn't want to step on them. A lot of people say, who cares? They're eating the flowers. They're bad guys. And they're not. They're not. They're part of nature. You look at this guy and you realize how wonderful nature works. Because you look at him, oh, he ate all the flowers. Well, what did he eat with the flowers? He ate the seeds. And when he ate the seeds, Who came and ate him? That's right, the birds came and ate him. And then the birds came and ate him, and then eventually the birds fly away, and what do? They have their droppings at another spot of the desert, and guess what they've done? They've gone and seeded a different part of the desert, and that helps those desert sunflowers for their next generation. So it all works together pretty magnificently, I think. All right, here's a flower I found that I really like. Look at that guy. It's called a beaver tail cactus. And the reason it's called a beaver tail cactus is because the pads look like the tail of a beaver. But it has just a magnificent magenta color. So there it is. I wanted to look at a little bit closer. Look at these guys. So this is a stunning beaver tail right here. Okay, now we can move. And I had another picture I wanted to show you down here in the desert. And this is a whole bunch of different flowers. So in the front we have a brittle bush. And just up there at about 1 o'clock is our pink guy. Well, that pink guy, we already know that one. That's the beaver tail. Off to the left, we have that big green blob right there, and that's called a cholla. And then if you look into the distance, you see a bunch of scraggly guys beyond the rocks, and that's our friend the ocotillo. Let's go take a look at our friend the ocotillo. And found this nice little valley. There's a bunch of flowers, but the guy I'm looking at is the ocotillo in the distance. And you can kind of see in the distance there's a little rainbow coming up. We have some moisture in the air. But the ocotillo is a gorgeous, gorgeous type of cactus. And it's so nice. All these flowers are wonderful, don't you think? Should we go give the ocotillo a hug and say thank you for doing all this for us? No, I don't think so. This is a different place, but I found a spot where I could take a picture of a dead ocotillo branch. And as you can see, the ocotillo is not somebody that you want to go mess around with. There they are, up close. Those gorgeous orange flowers right there. Now, you know, the thing about those flowers and the foliage on the ocotillo is the ocotillo only blooms once a year. Yet, when the green falls off, when the foliage falls off, if it rains, we saw that rainbow, it might rain, it might not. If it rains and that ocotillo has access to more water than usual, the green will come back, but not the orange. So it's doing everything it can to survive in these harsh desert environment. Now, one last thing I always like to say about the ocotillo. It has a bunch of different nicknames. Some people call it Jacob's staff. Other people call it flaming sword. But it has a lot of uses down in the southwest. It grows quite a bit down here, down the southwest. In Arizona, places like that, they have a big use for this. And you say, well, what could it be? Well, you got to remember those thorns we just saw, those spikes. What they'll do is they'll lash it together. They'll lash it all, and it'll make a fence. They'll make a fence out of ocotillo branches. And when you think about it, that's a pretty good fence, isn't it? Automatic barbed wire, because if you have a fence like that, guess what? The horse in your corral isn't going to be thinking about leaving. And the horse thief who's going to break in, he isn't thinking about doing it either. So it makes a very effective fence. All right. Here's our other two guys we talked about. This is the brittle bush. I really like the brittle bush because it looks like two bushes in one. It's got that green orb in the center, and then it's got another sphere of yellow flowers on the out. Beyond it, though, is the guy that I bet many of you know about, and this is our friend the cholla. And this particular guy is called a teddy bear cholla, and he's called a teddy bear cholla because of how those branches or arms stick out. They look like arms of little teddy bears. Now, one thing about the cholla is a cactus, you don't want to run into it, do you? And I have to tell you from experience, you definitely don't want to run into a cholla. It may be me. It may just be me. I don't know. But I have to tell you, I've been jabbed a few times by a cholla, and I guarantee you, it wrecks your day. Because at the end of each one of those little guys is a tiny little barb, a tiny little fish hook. And when it jabs into you, it will not come out. Now, for me, it hurts. Unfortunately, hiking as much as I do, I've been jabbed by a lot of things. I don't know why. It hurts way more And you don't even have to be jabbed hard. Just jabbed a little bit. It hurts way more than anything I've ever been jabbed by. And I don't know if that's some sort of allergic reaction I have to it or a chemical reaction or anything, but you bump into a cholla and you're sorry about it. I have to tell you, the thing about the cholla has another name, and it's called jumping cholla. And that's because people believe that those needles, if you get close enough, will sense you're there. There's something that the plant somehow senses you're there and will actually shoot them at you, which of course will ruin your day. But it doesn't actually shoot them. What it is that they are extremely sensitive. They're hardly attached to that bush at all. So you just barely touch those guys and you got it. And you got that fish hook in you. And then, like I say, it's misery to get it out. So that's why it's called a jumping cholla. Last thing I wanted to show here, look at those gorgeous flowers. I can't remember, I counted them one time before, but there's a whole bunch of buds right there. So this particular plant is about to explode with those pretty, kind of, what would you call that? Yellow-green right there. And the last thing, you know, we talk about, oh my gosh, look at that. And we talk about birds, and people say birds aren't very smart, but I have to tell you, there's one really smart bird. I wish I could add a picture of it, but I've never actually seen it. The desert wren, and this wren will go out, and the wren will actually make her nest inside the branches of that cholla, inside the pads there, in that little opening right there. And I think that's magnificent, because who is going to bother her eggs? Nobody. So I got to give some credit to that wren that builds her nest in there. Pretty smart. So that's the end of our first part of our adventure to see the wildflowers. I'm looking forward to doing the second.